Okay, Madam Chair, we are ready. Staff is ready to begin when you are.
Thank you. I now call to order the Town of Hilton Head Island Design Review Board meeting for September 14th, 2021. Teresa, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Thank you. Can you please call roll?
Certainly. Mr. Brown,
Present.
Miss Lippert,
Here.
Mr. McAllister,
Here.
Mr. Molesky,
Here.
Mr. Karstens,
Here.
Mr. Bassett, I do see Mr. Bassett is on the line. We'll note him as present.
I'm here if you can hear me now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bassett.
Thank you.
Ms. Foss.
Here. Thank you, Teresa. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Staff would like to change the DRB number for the subway application to 002098-2021. It's just a change in the permit number. It does not change the application.
Is that it, Chris?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes that Chris just made?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
You have 2 seconds. All right, the motion passes. All in favor. Now we'll move to the approval of minutes. Board members, have you had a chance to review the minutes? These are for the meeting of August 24th. Okay, if there are no changes, can I get a motion to approve the meetings of August 24th, 2021?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand.
You can't see me, but I'm raising my right hand.
You just saw you. Finally, your pretty face. Teresa, I realize I forgot to raise a hand on the approval of the agenda. Is that all right? Teresa, can you hear me? Something weird is happening.
Teresa, this is Chris. Teresa, are you there? I don't see Teresa. Well, I do see Teresa.
Chris, do you think it's okay? Do you want me to ask for a round of raise of hands for the agenda?
Yes, would you please, just to confirm that, and
Yes.
we'll move on from there.
We voted and had a motion and second the approval of the agenda, but I didn't ask for a round of hands. All in favor, please raise your right hand.
I'm raising my right hand.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to appearance by citizens. Teresa, do we have an appearance by citizens?
Madam Chair, this is Chris. I need to make sure that Teresa is on the line. Can you give me a minute, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Excuse me, everyone. This is Vicki Fannenschmidt speaking. Teresa asked me to let you know that she's having technical difficulties and she'll be right with you.
Okay, we will wait for her.
trying to set up number 3 Devont Drive East. 4:30 hyphen 5 o'clock today. Question mark.
Madam Chair, this is Teresa. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you.
We'll continue with our meeting. Teresa, do we have an appearance by citizens?
Madam Chair, at this time, we do not have any appearance by citizens, but I will note that public comments concerning agenda items were to be submitted electronically via the Open Town Hall portal. The portal closed at 12:15 today, and there were no comments of record. In addition to commenting on the portal, citizens were provided the opportunity to call into the meeting to comment. There were no requests to comment by phone.
Thank you, Teresa. We will now move on to unfinished business, the first one being We Food Hall DRB 001598-2021. We'll do it. Chris, if you would make a staff presentation. Chris, we can't hear you. Chris, it looks like your phone is off. Teresa, you can probably give him some advice.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, this is Vicki Fanenschmidt again. I just spoke with Chris and he is dialing in at this time. He's having some audio problems.
Thank you, Vicki. We'll wait for him.
Okay.
Can you tell me more about the naming property question mark? I might possibly have a buyer for that. But I'm Renovation front house coming on that they are interested in showing them that tomorrow.
Hey, Ryan, you might want to turn your mute on. But you were doing a good job whispering. I couldn't hear what you said.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. I appreciate it. During the August 24th Design Review Board meeting, the DRB reviewed the information submitted and voted to table review of the We Food Hall in order that the following additional information be provided for their review and approval. 1, the drawings or narrative shall be revised to indicate the proposed aluminum architectural panels will extend to the Planet Fitness bump out and to the end of the building, left side in store front elevation 2/A-2. 2, the drawings or narrative shall be revised to indicate the grain of the proposed aluminum architectural panels will be vertical. 3, the aluminum architectural panel sample submitted to staff as additional information shall be made available for review by the DRB. 4, the drawings or narratives shall be revised to indicate the proposed sign and gooseneck fixture will be relocated over the awning system. That sample and red line drawings were made available to the DRB for your all's review. Staff recommends approval of the aluminum panel system as submitted.
Thank you, Chris. Does any of the board, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes?
Okay. So you see the site is outlined in red, and 278 is running sort of at the top of the page and on the right-hand side, with Matthews Drive running through the center left. Does anybody not know where we are? Okay. So what you see here is the proposed aluminum panel system, information and manufacturer cut sheets of that system. The sample that was available for your review at Town Hall. The red line set that addresses the additional information required or requested by the DRB at the August 24th meeting. Just a note from the applicant approving that red line set. Annette was also at the site last week, I believe, with the sample, and she took the following photos as for your reference. I believe she shared these with you earlier. And that's that corner of the building, so you can see that the building does come all the way to the end, to the next building. There is no opening there. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Does the board have any questions for Chris? If not, do we have an appearance by the applicants?
Yes, I'm here. This is Paul Hansel, East
Thank
Coast
you.
Development Company.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any others? Okay, Paul, if you would like to add to Chris's narrative, you've got 10 minutes starting now.
No, I think that he's done it. I mean, the system that he showed, it has the wood grain look. The grid system that it actually bolts to the wall from gives it a consistent seam. So it will be exactly that 1/4 inch gap that is shown. And they're fine with doing the 4x8 panels with the grain. You know, they'll be horizontal, but the grain will be vertical as you guys requested. And really, that's all we have.
Thank you, Mr. Ansel. We will start with questions. If you'll hang around, Mr. Ansel, to answer any questions the board might have. I will start with Mr. Brown.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to review the material sample. I just have 2 comments. I agree with staff's recommendation. I would request that staff have the opportunity to review the retractable screen wall, the material as well as the color of that, and the joint detail, the grout color as well. I would I'd feel better if the staff could review that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, just a clarification on Ben's comment. Ben, you all approved the screen with staff's review of that screen earlier at a separate DRB meeting. So that's good to go. When they present that, staff will review it, and we'll go from there. Just a clarification.
Thank you, Chris. Ms. Lippert?
Thank you. My only question to the applicant would be, after having revisited the site one more time, seeing all that surface mounted conduit and it looked like condensate lines, will all of those be removed during the renovation?
Yes, actually, that'll get cleaned up. A lot of that conduit was there for the old Bilo machines that they had out front and some of their duct work, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, perfect. So I would just ask that that becomes a condition of the approval, that none of that is surface mounted to those metal panels.
Right.
But we'll see what the others say. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister?
All right, thank you. Thank you to the applicant for giving us a chance to look at the proposed material. Initially, I struggled a little bit with this. My question, my struggle was, is this too bold and too different for the rest of the center? It's all about context in my mind. But I thought back to what they did at Whole Foods and TJ Maxx and that Shelter Cove shopping center. And although it's not the same material, but it's similar in that they've got these wood panels on an existing commercial shopping center. And to me, I think it works there. So I think this works as well. So I'm good with it. And thank you to Annette for the conduit. I think that's important that we don't mount conduit or any of the GFI receptacles on top of it. But other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Molesky?
Yes, thank you. Let's see, audio is off. Our audio is on and no video. I'll figure that out. Here it is. Voila. All that just to say I agree with staff's recommendations. I think it looks great and I look forward to the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Karstens?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bassett?
Same here, nothing further to add.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to agree that it should be part of the condition that the conduits don't show. Otherwise, I think it looks really good. Annette, thanks for taking those photos. I like the wood grain up against the window casings with the dark bronze. So I think it's going to be a sharp project. Does anyone else have more comments? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion regarding We Food Hall DRB 001598-2021 for approval with the following condition: that no exposed conduit shall be mounted or visible shall be mounted to the aluminum panels or visible.
If I might make an amendment to your motion, we would also like staff approval of the grout color.
Yes, I would like to amend my motion to include staff's review of the grout color.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Teresa, please call the roll.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown?
Approve.
Ms. Lippert?
Approve.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes, approve.
Mr. Karsten?
Yes.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Thank you to the applicant as well. New development final. First one is the airport terminal renovation DRB 001860-201. Staff is making a presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. During the August 24th Design Review Board meeting, the DRB reviewed the airport terminal renovation information submitted and voted to table review of the airport terminal in order that the following additional information be provided for their review and for your all's review and approval. That information included: 1, provide a detail of the proposed vertical siding illustrating a 3/4 inch minimum deep reveal or a board and batten system. 2, specify large tabby planters at building entrances and exits. 3, revise the roof pitch in the elevations and/or illustrations to accommodate the building height restrictions. 4, reduce the number of downspouts and specify a round bronze-colored downspout. 5, confirm that the Hex A fixture is a bronze color finish. 6, review the E25 bracket. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions: reconsider the choice of the bike rack and submit for staff review and approval. And 2, provide a lighting photometric plan for staff review and approval. The site, part of the site is outlined in red on the screen. Can everybody see that? Okay. This is the terminal that we'll be looking at. The renovations are out in front of the terminal and to the site and expansion of the terminal. If anybody doesn't know where we are, let me know right now. Okay. A sketch of the proposed board and batten siding system. We're going to look at some of the elements of the design, manufacturer cut sheets for those elements, the lighting fixtures, an arm for the gooseneck, another lighting fixture, the bollard, lighted bollard, the proposed bench, the proposed bike rack, finish on the columns. Here is a roof plan and site plan for the proposed renovated terminal. So you can see the pedestrian crossing at the drop-off. Again, the other pedestrian crossing, there are 2, and the sidewalk and bollard locations here. Details for the parking lot. Again, a floor plan for the proposed airport terminal renovations. Elevations of the terminal. Again, the roof has been adjusted to accommodate, to meet the height restrictions allowed. Again, the slope has been altered here. End elevations of the new building. There's an outbuilding. Illustrations of the building with the new roof angle. Sort of bird's eye view down here on the bottom of the sheet. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Do we have applicants available?
We do have, it does show that Travis is on the call, Travis Pence.
Mute it.
There he
Can
is.
you hear us now?
Okay,
So this
Yes,
is
sir, we
Travis
can.
Pence and Brian Wilson with the Wilson Group Architects.
Thank you. You will have 10 minutes to add to Chris's narrative.
Don't really have a whole lot to add, other than we updated the renderings and the perspectives. We ran into some issues related to the board and batten, and ultimately decided to abandon the reveal type system and go with an expressed batten. And then we had a detail of that in our package for you all.
And on the renderings, you can see some of the close-up renderings, you can see the board and batten on the building.
Thank
But we changed the battens, we added the tabby planters, revised the roof pitch. We reduced the number of downspouts to approximately half of the downspouts. And we changed those to round and bronze per request. We confirmed the hex egg fixture is a bronze color finish. We reviewed the E25 light bracket and changed it to the one that was recommended, and that shows up on the renderings. A couple of other items, we just wanted to mention that on the renderings, we did update those to reflect the articulation of the ground plane at the drop-off canopy, and highlighted the use of where we're proposing oyster shell concrete, room finish concrete, and colored concrete. Another item that shows up on the renderings that was a comment is that we have enlarged the brackets on the exterior. They were 6 by 6 and now they are 8 by 8, and they now extend beyond the fascia line to give them a beefier appearance. In reference to the two items that were mentioned in plan comments, we are currently working with Palmetto Electric with their lights that they're providing at the parking lot, and we will be providing to you all an updated photometric exterior lighting plan. We hope to have that in the next couple of weeks, and we are fully open to any comments you have related to the bike rack. We're happy to change it to a bollard type bike rack. That's no issue for us.
So you can see if you go back to that rendering, just quickly. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can see where the oyster shell is delineated in the sidewalks, and you can see in the perspective next to it how it continues across the roadway and how it's delineated differently from the roadway.
And also the comment was made when we met back in August about that the finish on the columns could be smoother. And I had a photograph taken of where we've used that acrylic coating on another project elsewhere, where you can actually see it's actually a kind of a more homogeneous, smoother finish than those samples that were on the sample board represented. So just wanted to present that to you all so you could see what it is we were proposing. It is available in a lot of different finishes, but this is just one we happen to have to show you what intent is.
And I think that's really it. I mean, everybody's very familiar with this project, and we've tried to address every one of your issues. And I think that, once we put the board and batten on there where it came out instead of in, we really liked it. I think it really adds to it. So we were happy to do that.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you'll hang around so that the board can ask questions if need be, I'll start with Mr. Bassett.
Yes, I appreciate you addressing all of the various concerns and issues, and I think the board and batten is a nice look and gives it enough dimension. Appreciate all the revised elevations and work that went into showing us how it really looked. New roof slope looks good. I don't really see a significant difference there, which is probably a good thing. And it still looks nice. I agree with staff regarding the bike racks and doing something a little bit more upgraded and in keeping with the overall quality of the project. But other than that, didn't really have any additional requests or questions.
Thank you. Mr. Karstens?
Yes, I think everything, all the updates are excellent. I'll piggyback on the bike rack. You know, there's obviously the aesthetic from the entrance that's been greatly improved with the new signage. I think it's a continuation of that high level, and as having more of a surface mounted bike rack and just giving it some more permanence versus the, you know, oftentimes the lighter, flimsier ones don't have that. Thank you for incorporating the planters, the tabby planters. Initially, when I mentioned those, I thought they were going to be more adjacent to the sliding doors, but I think they actually work quite well where they are. The only thing I would say in accordance with those is work with the landscape architects on the plant material in there, just so that the overall height between the planter and the plant material inside doesn't get too large. You have those planters at 32 inches or 30 inches right now. And depending on what plant material they spec in there, I think if you want to keep that overall height between 3 and 3.5 feet, just to keep it so it doesn't end up being too much of height next to the door. But again, I appreciate the planters being incorporated. If depending on what the landscape architect decides to put in there, you might even be able to reduce the height of the planter themselves. But I'll look forward to just if the staff can review the final planting plan in accordance with that, and then the final spec on the tabby planters, I'd appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister?
Thank you. Well, a lot of my comments have already been vocalized, so I'll try not to sound redundant. Overall, thank you for all of your work. I think it's a great project, and I don't have much to add. I'll echo all the comments about the bike rack and Mr. Carson's comments about the planter.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
Thank you. I also echo everybody's comments. Thank you for incorporating everything that we commented on last time. I agree with the bike rack. And I had just one question about the board and batten detail. Is that both for the FC1A and the FC1B board and siding?
Let's see.
It's for the FC1A.
Yes, it would be the same.
I believe the FC1B is below the water table and the FC1A is above the water table, if I'm reading that correctly. And I didn't know if this detail applied to both.
It's only the 1A.
Okay, so can you just clarify what the detail is below the water table then, please?
I think what we were trying to achieve is responding to some earlier comments with the oyster shell finished base. And we wanted that to appear more smooth and base-like as opposed to the board and batten. So I don't have the detail in front of me of how that is proposed, but the goal of the FC1B with the darker color and the more homogeneous finish is to read as a heavier base for that board and batten that's above it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I think we just need to make that part of the record that the board and batten only applies to the FC1A. Everything else I'm good with and in agreement with the staff and prior board member comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Project's well done, and it's a great representation of island character. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I'm comfortable with staff approving the photometric when they get that available. I agree with the bike racks, but then I looked at that bench that you've got spec'd and look at the perspective, and in your perspective, you have a different bench, a more modern bench that I think goes better with the architecture of the building. And I would like to see the bench upgraded and made more modern to work with the building as well. I yeah, that one looks way better than the one with the curved arms and legs, I think. I'll let the rest of the board work or have a chance to talk about that. Let's see. That is, I also appreciate to the client all the changes you made. I think it looks fantastic. Thanks for working with us. How does the rest of the board feel about the benches? Mr. Bassett?
Good catch. I agree on the bench. I like the more modern look of the one in that view just shown.
Mr. Karstens?
As long as the specs and the materials match up, I'm good with the design and the perspectives.
Okay, Mr. Molesky?
Yes, and what I wanted to share maybe as a suggestion for the bike racks is I believe that as you're entering the airport off of the main street, in the center there's a cool little artistic expression, and maybe it's, you know, some 4x4s that are all stacked at various heights to create a little, you know, wave effect. Perhaps something like that could be repeated or implemented for the bike racks, and maybe a similar color stain or whatever could be considered for the benches as well, just to try to, you know, create some consistency and use of materials from the entrance to the airport. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
I agree. I do like the benches in the rendering more, particularly because they don't have armrests on the ends, which make them more user-friendly for more people who want to space out a little bit more.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I have nothing additional to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on the application?
Trying to unmute. I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion for approval with conditions for DRB 001-860-2021 with the following conditions: all of staff comments, a clarification that the fiber cement board and batten detail is only for FC1A. For staff review, more modern bench with the same materials as the prior bench, but no armrests and more modern look. And that the plant material in the planters be reviewed with a landscape architect to be not too tall or shorten the planter, and provide a spec on the planter, all of which to be reviewed by staff.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Teresa, can you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Brown?
Approve?
Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes, approve.
Mr. Karstens?
Yes.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We'll now move on to new business. And I believe Mr. McAllister is going to recuse himself, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
This is Dolphin Head Recreation Area, DRB 001-997-2021.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. The applicant is proposing renovation of Dolphin Head Recreation Area. This area was originally developed in the 1970s and is heavily used for private and public events such as a sunrise Easter service. The facilities have served the community well, but are aged and in need of an update. The POA plans to demolish the buildings, playground, and basketball court in order to expand and update the facilities. A new event lawn adjacent to the building is also proposed. Infrastructure related to the building will be adjusted to serve the new building. Staff recommends conceptual approval with the following changes to be addressed in final submission. 1, provide a tree protection plan that specifies 3 to 4 inches pre-construction mulch, mycore, and pre- and post-construction fertilization for significant and specimen trees near parking improvements, walks, and buildings. 2, show 15-foot no construction zone around specimen tree trunks. 3, provide study of picnic structure in relation to adjacent tree branches. 4, provide hardscape construction details that reduce impact to tree feeder roots. On your screen right now, the site is outlined in red. It's Dolphin Head. I think everyone should be familiar with it. Is there anybody not familiar with the location? Not seeing any. Photos of the site and the surrounds. So you can see here the riprap that is on the edge of the site. There's the boardwalk. The basketball court down at the bottom. Existing drive aisle and parking. There's the playground, court and playground area. Here's the existing structure on the site. The walk, perimeter walk. Again, the deck that's associated with the building, the existing deck. Views out. And the survey of the site. A site analysis. So you can see the existing trees, the existing structures, everything there, views out. And here's the proposed renovations to the site. So here's that picnic pavilion that we need to look at these surrounding trees to make sure there's not a lot of branches being cut. Proposed playground here. The new building, the event lawn here. You can see the bluff walk around the perimeter. Concept of the proposed building. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Do we have applicants available?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brad Hicks with Wooden Partners.
Tim Probst from PEG Architects.
Thank you. If you can have 10 minutes to respond to Chris's presentation or add to it.
I don't think we have anything to add to it. Chris did a good job of explaining what we're proposing. So we're here to answer any questions if you have any, but I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I will start with the board discussion with Mr. Brown.
A few quick comments. I unfortunately did not visit the site this week, but I'm familiar with the site. I'll definitely get out there before the final comes in. With that in mind, I saw a restroom facility on the southern portion of the property near the 60-inch live oak in the utility easement. Can the applicant or Chris verify, is that a bathroom facility for the golf course? And I assume that's not being touched with this application. It slightly goes over the property line.
Is this that location?
It is. I saw, it caught my eye because it was over the property line, and then I saw it on the as-built, so I'm assuming it's an existing bathroom for the golf course.
Staff cannot answer that question definitively. We can certainly look at that for final, though.
Thanks. The grill area caught my eye. I know it caught yours as well with the cluster of live oaks. And I'm sure the applicant will further review that before final. And I agree with your comment about the looking at the tree canopy over by the picnic area. And the last comment is, this might be outside the purview of the DRB, but I would just encourage the applicant to really look at the parking. I counted 44 parking stalls for a 10-acre park, and I suspect there will be more cars than that on the site. But I support the application. I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert?
Thank you. I think conceptually, the whole layout is a nice upgrade to the site. I think the drawings are probably more developed than what was submitted, and hence I have a little bit hard time discussing the rec building because I'm struggling to understand its massing completely. But Chris, if you could go to A2.4. Thank you. My comments would be that the wood columns to me look a little bit skinny. I think they should be upsized, one or reviewed to be upsized one level. On the waterfront color elevation, that's where I couldn't follow the massing completely. I would like to hope that that was maybe more of a Photoshop color, incorrect color going on, because I think the low slope roof should continue wrapping that corner to have a clean massing. There's a lot of ins and outs on this building that the rest of the drawings will help clarify. And I think just cleaning some of those ins and outs up with the roof line will really help the reading of the building. On the right side elevation, I recommend just studying the extent of that dormer. I understand that there are trusses inside with a cathedral ceiling, but one could potentially, add something like 2 windows on either side to the next trusses and keep the sort of piers. I just think it looks out of scale with the building, so reviewing that. And on the site plan, Chris, if I could ask you to go to L100. There, I guess I would like to better understand that trellis plan north of the artificial turf, just to study whether that's blocking any of the nice views. And then with regard to the artificial turf, I think it would be nice if that has a very defined edge. For instance, something like an 18-inch wall so that it's not visible when one approaches the site. A wall at 18 inches could serve as a seating wall, so it could be multifunctional as far as clearly defining yet hiding the artificial turf in the project. One item that is not DRB per se, but I just want to at least have said is it appears to me that the entry is accessible, but the restrooms are not. Just something to ponder programmatically, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Molesky?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely familiar with the site and looking forward to the improvements. The notes I had, Annette stole a couple of them there. Yeah, I commented that the proportions of those wood columns on that standalone structure seem like maybe they could be beefed up perhaps. So please consider that. I wanted to ask, as far as the site plan goes, what is the proposed width of the walkway? And the reason that I ask is, as someone who has spent a lot of time there, I know whenever I would be more of a bike rider on there, and there would be people, walking their dogs, and I'm riding my bikes, I'd always have to kind of get off of the walkway just as a courtesy to let them pass. Since this will probably get a lot of use, are these walkways going to be in the 6 to 8 foot width range, or what's proposed? Not all of them, but the ones along the bluff and the connector portions of them.
Yes, all of the walkways internal of the project will be 6 foot minimum, and then the continuation of the bike trail that comes up from the plan south, that is 8 foot until it hits that, intersects with the concrete, and then it goes back to a 6 foot.
Okay, good. I think that will be well received for what that's worth. Back to the main building, and perhaps this is what Annette was alluding to, but I guess let's see what's labeled as the right side color elevation. Right there. I mean, the shed dormer. I would ask, is that possible to expand that more to the left and right, just to make there feel like there's more windows, more dormer, less roof? I don't know if that was necessarily Annette's comment. Again, I don't know what's going on in the floor plan, if that's available, or if this whole thing is just like an open area there for people to rent for events. But that would be something that would let in more light and perhaps, again, minimize the amount of what appears to be metal roof that people would be seeing. So that would be a suggestion there. Other than that, so far, looks like you're off to a great start. So thank you for listening.
Mr. Karstens.
I will echo a couple of the architectural elements in regards to, the upsizing on that pavilion. I think that's a good item that I've recognized. Even the potential of those upsides, reducing it from 2x4 configuration of posts to just a 2x3 setup. Knowing that the new fire pit is where the existing oyster tables are. If those elements are still going to kind of reside, I know they're kind of a free form element, but even recognizing the opportunity of where those might reside, especially in relationship to kind of that grilling picnic area. To Mr. Brown's comment, the parking obviously will be an upgrade, this addition of a permeable parking area, but there is a lot of overflow, and it is very much a kind of a park as you will situation right now off of the asphalt drive. So even if it's just indicated on these plans, the potential for those overflow spaces or that overflow parking, and even just getting ahead of it. I know too also there existing is the wood post with the rope or chain that helps to kind of contain parking. And I see you do have I see you do have a feature similar to that on your plans that I'll look forward to seeing the detailing on. The stairs down to that lower walk, I'll be interested in seeing how that gets detailed, because that is a new element compared to anything that's out there now. What I've always recognized of this site is that it's always very open. There is sporadic understory and very limited shrubs. Most of the shrubs existing are around the existing building or kind of in the one area on the eastern side. So hopefully being able to keep this openness, obviously with the beautiful site that it is, keeping these nice sight lines, but at the same time, respecting the fact that there's residences across the street, and just, maybe in shifting this building from the existing location into that open area where the playground feature is now existing, it's going to change, some of the dynamic. That building's definitely going from being in the trees to being out a little bit more in the open. So I think we'll just want to be aware of that, and just how that it appears. You can kind of see it goes from that eastern side over to where it's more open, and then last two items for me, the lawn area associated with the building. Again, with this being so open and the suggestion of a synthetic lawn, I'm in favor of synthetic lawns because I think they've come a long way in regards to color, texture, and appearance, especially underneath the canopy. There's going to be pine needles and all types of stuff that'll eventually find itself into this lawn area. So I think it will help to kind of denude the idea that it isn't necessarily, I mean, it's close to pristine, but again, synthetic lawns have come a long way from AstroTurf. But I would say, you'll want to have a nice border to it. And the fact is that this is the only lawn area in this entire project. I think too, it'll kind of set it off as being more of a formal aspect associated with the building. So we'll just want to make sure the edges are treated well, and the in and out of that, the in and out and often of that lawn area. And finally, I know it's not part of this submittal, but site lighting. I think right now there might be more of a street type light fixture that is found throughout the project. But knowing that this site is going to get a lot of use on those edges of the days, especially in the evenings, let's try to see if we can't step up the site lighting when it comes to the overall aesthetic and being able to make this a space that the community can really enjoy in those edge hours, especially in the evening, and especially highlighting all of the wonderful canopy that exists. So I look forward to the next submittal. I'm liking where this is going.
Thank you. Mr. Bassett.
Yes, I really like the direction of this project as well. I think it'll be a welcome upgrade to the community. I agree with the other comments about upsizing those wood columns, especially at the picnic pavilion and anywhere that's open, like on the community building, that open end. Having a little bit more substantial proportion to those columns, I think would be helpful. And that was really the only initial comment I had, but I love the idea of a perimeter, a kind of a defined perimeter around that lawn area, the synthetic turf, and something that could potentially double as a seating area, I think would be really good as far as usability of that space as well.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with staff comments. I initially would just say no to the artificial turf, but then I hadn't thought of Annette's idea of surrounding it. I don't know if that interrupts if you do a wedding out there and you have to line up chairs in a straight row. I don't know, but it might give more seating for the people that are at the wedding. To Judd's comment that we're going to have tree materials falling on the top of it, they're going to blow that off every time they have a wedding, I think. So I think the artificial green turf sitting out there in the middle of dirt and leaves is going to stand up too much. So I'd like to see it be either a different material or hidden a little bit more. And that is it with I agree with the beefing up of the columns. And if there's a way to reduce the amount of roof to what we're seeing in the building, I agree with that comment by John. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Annette.
I'll make a motion for approval with conditions of DRB 001997-2021 with staff comments 1 through 4, as well as that overflow parking be shown on the landscape plan, that site lighting be studied, that a strong border or low knee wall be around the artificial turf area, that the amount of visible roof on the rec building be studied along with the dormer, and that the columns be upsized by 1 size. Somebody may need to amend for the grilling area. I missed that comment.
Judd, would you like to amend?
I think staff comment covers the grilling area as far as clearance, but I would amend it to also just an expression of the grilling area, with the use of the oyster tables or the oyster roast tables.
I don't think you finished your sentence, Judd.
I get that a lot from my wife. I would amend to say that the grilling area be studied for clearance with the existing trees to remain, and also any additional programmatic elements associated with the grilling and picnic area be studied.
Annette, would you like to amend your motion?
I would like to take on Judd's amendment to the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Teresa, can you please call the roll?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown?
Approve.
Ms. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karsten?
Yes.
Mr. Bassett?
Yes.
Ms. Foss?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We will move on to Alteration Addition Subway DRB 002098-2021.
Thank you. This application is only for consideration of the proposed exterior building repaint. To maintain the applicant's construction timeline, elimination of the arches and a modification to a door location were previously approved under a minor corridor. The applicant is subject to the rules and regulations that Subway Corporate sets forth. It is these new color requirements that the applicant is submitting for consideration. It is staff's belief that the proposed colors are not in keeping with the design guide. Staff recommends denial at this time. The screen in front of you, the site is outlined in red. 278 is kind of running diagonally through the middle of the screen. It's important to note every time, it seems like we keep coming back to this area, so I think it's important to note several things. You've got the new gas station that was completed a couple of months ago at this corner. You can see the edge of the airport runway at the top middle. Also the new Parker's location, which recently made its way through the DRB. Even more recently are the renovations to McDonald's on the far right-hand corner where the cursor is, as well as there was a conceptual review for a car wash in this location, consolidating these 2 units. And then just off the screen to the bottom right is the location of the Wee Food Hall that we looked at earlier in this meeting. I assume everybody knows where we are. If not, let me know right now. Not hearing or seeing any. This is the site. It's not proposed. This is the site. It's an existing building. The arches on the windows have been removed. So this is what the building looks like now. This is proposed canopy for mobile ordering. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. This is the proposed color board. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. And the building here with the colors on it. And you can see the proposed icon wall that Subway is requesting. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Do we have applicants available, present?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we may have someone that I need to confirm. I'm sorry, hold on. Joe Corbin, are you in the meeting? Joe, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
We can hear Carla.
Oh, you can. Okay. Sorry, I don't know how to do this.
We can hear Carla.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know how to do this.
Okay. If you have dialed in on your computer, please mute your computer if you're on the phone as well, because it causes some feedback. So if you're dialing in on the phone and also on your computer, please mute your computer. Okay, Joe, I'm just confirming that this is the application that you are concerned about. Joe, can you hear me?
Chris, I saw Joe raise his hand via Zoom.
Okay, I don't even have a picture of Joe on mine, so thank you. Okay, so Madam Chair, yes, the applicants are on the line. My apologies.
Is Joe one of the applicants or a citizen?
Joe is one of the applicants as staff understands it.
Thank you. Do our applicants have anything in addition to add to Chris's summary? Carla, can you hear?
Carla, can you hear me?
She may have muted both, huh?
Yeah. Carla, this is Chris. Please unmute your computer, I guess. Okay.
I'm unmuted.
Carla,
there you go.
Great, Carla. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Can you see me? I'm unmuted.
Carla,
There you go.
Great, Carla. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Can you see me?
There you go. Great, Carla. We can hear you now. Thank you.
Echo.
I know everything I'm saying, I'm hearing come back to me. I wanted to show you something.
Echo.
I know everything I'm saying.
Carla, this is Teresa Haley, the DRB secretary. I've muted you for just a moment. I'm hoping you can still hear me, but I wanted to let you know that you have to mute your computer or the Facebook Live feed that you're streaming right now in order for the echo to stop. Carla, I've given a moment for that to be stopped. If you would unmute on your end now, and I've sent you a request to do so. Carla, are you there?
Yes. Yes, and I unmuted, just like you asked me to. Yes. Yes, and I
Carla, it appears that you're having some feedback issues. If you have two devices streaming right now, you'll need to mute one of them. If you have two devices streaming right now, you'll need to mute one of them.
It looks like we've lost Carla. Teresa, while we wait for Carla to get back, I think we need to correct Joe Corbin appears to be with Coastal Canvas, which I think he's with the next application.
Thanks.
It looks like Carla's connecting now and should be on if we give her a little bit more time.
Chris, it appears that Carla has joined by video only. I don't see an audio option. Carla, if you're having trouble with the audio, you may want to consider dialing in from your phone.
Oh, great. It looks like we've got Carla. Carla, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you see me? Can you see me? No.
Yes, we can.
You can see me. Can you see me? Can you see me? Okay. No.
Yes, we can.
You can see me. Can you see me? Can you see me? Okay. No, you cannot see me. So I can't show you anything. You can see me. Can you see me? Can you see me? Goodness. No, you cannot see me. So I can't show you anything.
Carla, this is Chris Darnell with the Design Review Board. We wouldn't, the board typically does not review additional information presented at the meeting if they have not had a time to review it. Might I suggest maybe that in order to get rid of this feedback issue that you consider just calling in? Is that possible?
Chris, what is the number that I would call in?
It should be on your Zoom link that you were provided. It should be on your Zoom link that you were provided. It should be on your Zoom link that you were provided.
Chris, is that the same phone number that the board members receive?
Yes, it is. It should be, yes.
Okay, then I can read it off. Carla, the number you can call in is 929.
Annette, this is Teresa. I apologize for interrupting. Carla has dropped from the meeting. I will email that information to her again.
Perfect, thank you.
Teresa, I know you have your hands full. Ms. Chairman, what do you think about moving forward with the last presentation and waiting for Carla to get back?
Chris, I think that's a great idea. So right now we'll move on to New York City Pizza Awning DRB 002009-2021 with a presentation from Chris.
Okay. This application is for the installation of an awning at New York City Pizza. A red awning existed on the building prior to the renovations. That red color is grandfathered in based on the previous awning. The signage is approved or will be approved under a separate permit. So let me just clarify. The signage, once the awning is approved, they'll get the permit for the signage approved. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. 1, change the location and/or size of the awning to be consistent with the architectural features of the building. Provide a dimensioned plan of the awning and window locations for staff review and approval. 2, cantilever the awning off the building and eliminate the columns. 3, eliminate the graphic print on the awning material, other than the signage, which is, again, approved under a separate permit. And if anybody has any questions about the graphic print, please let me know, and we can show you exactly what staff means. So in your on your screen right now, the building is circled. This is an old aerial, but directly at Pope Avenue runs diagonally across your screen. You can see Caligny Circle at the bottom. Across the street is the site for the Low Country Celebration Park. Circle Center sets here. The new hotel is directly behind this building here, and you have a lagoon running off to the right. Does anybody not know where we are or have a problem understanding? If not seeing or hearing. The top is the existing renovated building. The canvas sign or the banner that's there now is only a temporary sign and will be removed when the awning is added. Again, you can see here the proposed awning location in that building with the hotel behind it. Just a close-up of that. pull back a little bit. This was pre-renovations, so you can see the existing red awning. And the proposed colors. This is that graphic that staff is concerned about. It makes the awning become a sign, so it would limit the awning size to the limited to sign sizes per the LMO. So here you can see the proposed awning. Again, this is the verbiage is what would be approved under a sign permit. And this is the print that staff is suggesting it just needs to be a solid material. You'll note this comes off the building and there's a column here for the awning. And here is a section of what that would look like coming off the building. Here it's important to note that that's that second story patio or porch, whatever you want to call it. And here's what it would look like on the building. I guess staff's suggestion is that instead of stopping it here in the middle of this window, that it extend over or shift over so that it stops at a more appropriate place on the building. Same on this side. It looks like it's stopping at a column, which makes sense here, but not here. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Corbin, are you present now? Or Mr. Barber? Mr. Corbin, can you add to Chris's commentary? Your audio is not on.
Mr. Corbin, can you hear us?
He did raise his hand when I asked if he was there again, Chris, but we can't hear him.
He says he has no microphone.
Oh.
Can he call in and use phone audio?
That's good.
Here we go.
Joe, this is Chris Darnell. I would suggest you call in to the Zoom meeting so that we can hear you. And Andrew, Mr. Barber, I see that you're trying to connect to audio. You might want to try to dial in as well. Kathy, can you give us a minute, please?
Absolutely.
Chris, it looks
Thank
like
you.
Corbin's asking for the number to call in.
Okay, I couldn't read that. Okay. Give us a minute, Mr. Chairman, please.
Yes.
Okay, this is Chris Darnell with the town of Hilton Head. Mr. Barber and Mr. Corbin, you need to use the number on your Zoom Evite to dial in. There's also a passcode on the Evite, and you'll be able to dial in. There's several numbers, just pick one and dial in to the Zoom meeting. We cannot give you the number over the meeting because this is a live recorded meeting. So it's not appropriate for us to give you the number. I need you to refer to your Zoom Evite to get that number.
Chris and everyone, I'm going to take 2 seconds and run up and let my dog out because he's barking.
Am I still in this meeting? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are. Hold on a minute, please.
Okay, that's fine. I just wasn't sure. I didn't hear anything.
Hey, Kathy, this is Chris.
Yes. Do you want to go back to Subway?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I hate
That's
to
okay.
keep flipping, but we've got Carla on the line and she's connected, so we could go ahead and do that review.
I agree.
Um,
Actually, you already made your presentation,
that's what I was about to ask.
so we can let Carla give her feedback to your presentation. Carla?
Yes, okay, Chris, I don't know what you said, so I'm sorry, I can't give much feedback to what you said, and I thought that I could show like a couple of pictures of some things, but I guess that was not either allowed, and I can't connect with the video anyway. So what I had done is I just, I did send my letter. Was my letter provided to the members of the board?
Yes, ma'am, it was part of the package.
It was provided, so they did read that, okay. And so I guess just, reiterating kind of what my letter said is that we are longtime residents, and we do want to have a positive impact on the community, and we have for 34 years. We've tried to do that. So that the colors that we're requesting are not colors that we have made up. These are colors that Subway franchise from corporate has come up with as part of their new refresh program, which companies have to do after they've been in business for so long. They need to rebrand and refresh, and so ours is actually called Subway Refresh. So these are the colors that with top marketing companies in the United States, these are the colors that they selected. Now, one of the things that I did point out is that, well, it was natural tan for the body, functional gray, Sherwin-Williams functional gray for the accent stripe on the bottom of the building, and a Benjamin Moore, it's called yellow green, and that was for a small accent wall on the drive-through side. Now, one thing I did point out in that is that the building does sit pretty far back off of the road, unlike a lot of frontage buildings that are very, very close to the building, or close to 278. And so because of that, we feel like that's not going to be, that green stripe would not have been prohibitive. I don't really know what Chris said about that. But I had some pictures, which I didn't realize I couldn't show those today. So I had a picture of like a very large green sign that was almost this exact color. In fact, it looks like it's the exact same color. And then I also had, that was a previous sign, that was End Market. Then I also had the Shelter Cove Harbor and Marina in the bright blue, which is very, very bright. And there are a lot of bright blue signs along the corridor. But below that, there are some very bright green plants. And I looked at that and I thought, well, the green we're asking for is not even as green as these plants. So, I was just pointing that out as a sort of a note on the nature blending part. I'm not sure, like, if you'd like to ask me some questions, I would be glad to answer, and I can explain. I know, I can probably answer anything you'd like to ask me.
We will ask you, and you'll have time to respond to any board member who asks you a question. So if you'll just hang on, I'll go through the board members for them to make comments and ask you questions. We'll start with Mr. Bassett.
Sure. Yeah, I'm as far as the colors are concerned, no problem with the natural tan and functional gray. I think that those are colors that would be fairly nature blending and typically work on other buildings in the area. The green is brighter than what is typically seen. And is this something, Carla, that Subway absolutely requires all franchisees to have on their buildings, or is it just their preferred color scheme?
Well, when you have so this is, like I said, this is a new Subway refresh. It's a rebranding marketing theme. So what they have come up with, this is what they've come up with. And so on a freestanding building, they like this one little small accent down the side. Now, they actually preferred it to have a green band at the top of the building and also a green band at the bottom of the roof, which we explained that we can't ask for the bright green up in the air like that, but we said possibly, we could get this, the green vertical stripe, which is a few feet wide, and do that with our choice mark sign on it. Are you all familiar with a choice mark sign, with that word?
Is that the basically the mark instead of the entire logo?
Exactly. It's like, for instance, like maybe like Target has their bright red bullseye. that would be their choice mark sign. So you might see that sometimes instead of the word Target. So that's a choice mark sign. But in any case, so Subway's kind of got like a green and a green and yellow choice mark sign, or they can do them green and white depending on the background. In this case, they were hoping to do the green stripe, which is not the whole side of the building. It's a very minimal part of the side of the building. It's just under the roof eave, under the functional gray. It's a vertical green stripe, and then they would do the white and yellow choice mark sign on top of that. It's just something that's like, you hope it will be recognizable to the public. I mean, that is actual, they've done marketing research, and that's what you want it to be, is recognizable to the public. And that's why these colors that they choose are important, because a customer for a franchise, you go from one location to another, you want to be able to recognize that particular franchise. And it's very important because we pay a very large franchise fee every month from every single thing that we sell. And that's part of what you're paying for, is that you want your product or your restaurant to be recognizable. And in our case, especially as tourists come onto the island, as well as the residents, when we have a nice population of residents too, and you want it to be recognizable, but you also want your tourists that are coming on this island to be able to recognize, oh, that's Subway, let's go there and get a bite to eat. So that's what that purpose of that is. On the side of the building, it's only on the one side that we are on. We are moving from the, if you're facing the building, we are moving from the right side of the building to the left side of the building so that we can have a drive-through, which has also become very important for Subway. So we are essentially building a brand new restaurant inside. I mean, it's completely going to be everything new on the inside, which is, you know, not totally your concern, but I'm just explaining that to you. And so we are trying to work with the owner of the building to completely refresh the outside of the building from a really tired, kind of old Taco Bell building look, so that it doesn't look like that. And we want it to look new and up to date. And so these are the Subway colors, but we would only do the green on the side that we are on, just that one stripe. On the other side, it would just be the functional gray and the natural tan. Most of it natural tan with functional gray accents. It would only be that on the other side for another tenant to partake in at a later time. But anyway, that's kind of where I am with that. Any more questions with that? So yes, we did not come up with that. That is a Subway. And if it was to be denied, then I have to have in writing a formal denial to go to corporate, because that's something that, yes, they've put out there for us.
Okay,
But, I really do. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think that because we sit so far back from the road, and like I was pointing out, I mean, I've seen signs that are this bright actually on a road, that are very, very bright. And I've seen plants and I've seen other bright colored, signs. I think more to the point of just a comment that I might have to make about our buildings and our signage. I think we do need to be tasteful, but to my thoughts, tasteful is not sage green, brown, and tan. Tasteful is the size and the scale of things to a large degree. In other words, we don't have neon signs and we don't have large, big signs that overtake our roadways and those kind of things. And so I'm very cognizant, because like I said, I've lived here 34 years. I'm very cognizant of, the island and the town wanting to have tasteful signage and tasteful buildings. So, I'm not trying to override that by any means, but I do think that we find all colors in nature. And I think that's what makes nature beautiful, is that we have bright blue and pale blue, and we have bright greens and, soft greens and muted greens, and we have chocolate browns, and we have all the colors, and they're all beautiful.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Bassett if he has additional comments or questions.
Sure.
No, I understand. And I appreciate the explanation. It makes sense that color's tested, and I think a lot of what Subway looks at is something that is geared toward attracting attention, and we're kind of sometimes in opposition to that. Sometimes our role is to make sure things don't attract attention, and are more nature blending. My thought on that color, especially with the orange or red orange roof, it really does stand out. And we're kind of obligated to look at all sides of the building and make sure all sides of the building have similar appeal. So I have to agree with staff recommendation on that green color, that it's probably a little bright for the setting. And my concern would be that other future applicants would come forward and say, this bright, yellow orange color was used on that building. Why can't we do it too? So that's just my personal thought. I think some of the signage around the island does tend to be a little too bright in some ways, in my opinion. And so I hate to be one who thinks it would be better to be more subdued, but that's my opinion on it, or my take on it, just because it's not as nature blending as some of the other possible colors.
Right. Well, so my response to that is, and I understand what you're saying, but again, I just want to, and I hear you and I understand what you said, but I guess I don't quite think that nature blending is all subdued, because the nature has all colors. But the other thing I would like to say is that as a business owner, and like I said, we've been here since the 1980s, it is difficult to stay in business here. And I will like to point out that I have seen one after another business go in, go out, go in, go out, and at great expense and probably failure to the owners of these businesses, and especially a lot of different franchises that have been on the island over the years that have been really nice franchises. And
Carla, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are only here to talk about aesthetics. We can't talk about financials, any of that. And I would like to move the
only thing I about that was that sometimes the aesthetics of how you look sometimes can make a difference in how you stay in business. That's all I was saying about that.
Okay.
But any other questions?
Mr. Bassett, do you have more comments?
I don't.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Karstens.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to echo the primary building colors. I'm on board with. I think that green, while appropriate in some smaller scales and size in signs, considering it's an almost 10-foot section of the building, and as Mr. Bassett's considered, we have to look at all sides of the building, especially since that faces the Northridge Plaza. I'd be looking at something a little more subdued in the green for that color, just with the amount of wall space that's covering up. So,
thank you. Mr. Molesky.
Thank you. Yes, congratulations on that upcoming new interior. Exciting stuff, but other than that, I appreciate your situation, but our intention here, island character, I get your point of view. I don't necessarily see the color of the building having anything to do with the success of a person's business. One suggestion to offer is if Chris or who's ever at the helm of the computer can show that lovely green wall with the arrows and stuff on there. Perhaps instead of make that green go back to the tan color, and make the white arrow the green and make the S the white color. Then you still kind of got your colors in there, but it's much less obtrusive. I've been coming to the island for a long time and lived here as well. And the joke is, whenever you first come here, you can never find anything because it's so well hidden, and that's kind of the point. And I think would just be going entirely in the wrong direction. I would not approve this, and that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister.
All right, thank you. I'll echo a lot of the comments. I think the body color and the trim color are great. At the end of the day, we have to look at this through the lens of the design guidelines. And I hear your point and I understand your challenges and I appreciate it. But it's our job to make sure that all these projects comply with the design guideline. And the green accent wall, while I understand what you're saying, that you are set back from the street and farther from visibility. And while distance from the street is really critical for scale and proportions, it really can't have any effect on color. That's my interpretation of it, is distance to the street and color really doesn't matter. So I think this large green wall, like others have mentioned, I think it just draws a lot of attention. And so for that reason, I can't support this as submitted. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Carla, did you have something to add?
Oh, I was just going to say, how many more people do we have on the board that have for comments? Since I'm on the phone, I don't know.
We have 3 more people. And
Three
I'm
more, okay. And then I'll have another comment. Yeah, I'll just wait to hear those 3 people if they want to make a quick comment or whatever.
all right, Ms. Lippert. Annette, are you
Sorry, I
there?
had to unmute.
Okay.
I'm going to have a quick question for Chris. Can you just clarify, are we commenting on all of the building colors or just on the green accent wall or the accent wall and that yellow canopy?
We're commenting on all of that.
Okay. In that case, I find that the building has become very stripy due to the band at the top and bottom. And so not only am I not in favor of the green, which to me is not nature blending, while certain greens may be, that one to me is not. I completely agree with Mr. Bassett's comments that part of the LMO is that all facades shall be treated equally. That green wall does not do that. And I also think that the yellow canopy, while that yellow certainly exists at curbs as a safety or at yellow bollards, I also think that the yellow canopy is too bright. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
The application as submitted is not in keeping with Highland character and it is not supported by our design guide. Thank you.
Thank you. I will make the comment. I agree that the yellow canopy and also the black canopy support structure, none of those are island character and they go against our design guidelines. So I will allow the client to give one more response and then we will move to make a motion. Carla?
Okay, so as an alternative, it sounds like that no one wants to approve the green section. So as an alternative, and I'm not sure if Chris has this picture, I think he does. We could do the functional gray in that area and then do our choice mark sign on that in the green and yellow choice mark. And so I was just going to say we went ahead and went back to our home office and said, look, this probably might not fly. Okay, we need another option. So our other option is that we could do it in the functional gray, which then would be very smooth and keeping with everything else on the exterior. So that's an option if you would all agree that looks nature blending. It's just using the same colors that have been everywhere else.
I'm going to make the comment that the yellow canopy is not island character or acceptable either. And the island, the PMS, where is it? 7548 yellow that's used on the canopy is too bright. And then the canopy structure is black, and we don't allow black or white or off-white. And I know the menu board isn't part of our thing, but it's also the same bright green, and I would suspect you'll have an issue when you come up for sign approval as well.
Okay, on the kiosk ordering, that is a pre-manufactured kiosk. That the bollard is the same color that bollards are in many places, and the top of that is for safety. And I will tell you that I know that I've seen it in person. I've got it at another location. That's a safety thing on the top, and the bollard is the same matching color. And as far as the black, that is almost entirely hidden behind trees and everything where you go through the drive-through. That's the support structure of that. And it's done in a metal with a baked on finish. So for us to try to, get rid of that would be pretty difficult. And that whole kiosk is behind, it's behind trees. It's got quite a few tree coverage right there. So
okay, thank you.
You can't really even look over and see that from, let's say from Home Goods or whatever.
But you can
It's not
see, yes, you can see it when you're driving your car up to that. But it's not the point of who can see it from far away. It's the building right there. I'm going to ask if anyone on the board would like to make a motion. And I will also tell the board, this is Kathy Foss, the chair. I'm also going to tell the board, advise the board that if we deny this, usually if we deny a project, it can't come back for another year. But if we're going to deny it based on those three colors and they come back with a drastic change, it can come back to us within this year. It could come back next week if they had it, just so you know, and we won't feel bad about putting her out of business for a year. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Is it also possible to approve subject to staff review of final colors, but deny the green? Because I wouldn't have a problem with the alternative color, proposed, and a white and yellow or green and yellow service mark on that functional gray background.
And we heard it from Carla, if she gets a denial from us, she has that in writing, she can go back to the corporate office and get the options. We do that. There's hardly any of the real bright signs on the island that have ever been approved at the bright colors. They're always changed. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion. I may have the application number incorrect, as I know it was revised at the beginning, but I'm going to read what I have here. I move that we deny Subway DRB 002006-2021.
Mr. Brown, you do have it wrong. I'll tell you what it is. Ready?
Please.
002098-2021.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Based on the application is not in keeping with island character, and it is not supported by the Town of Hilton Head Island Design Guide. And we encourage the applicant to work with staff to resubmit their application significantly different. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Carla. Teresa, could you take roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Brown?
Approve.
Ms. Lippert?
Approve.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Molesky?
Yes.
Mr. Karsten,
Yes.
Mr. Bassett,
Yes.
Ms. Fox.
Yes,
Motion carries 7-0.
thank you. We will now go back to New York City Pizza Awning, DRB 002-009-2021. Chris has made his presentation. Is the applicant available?
This is Chris Darnell with the town of Hilton Head. Mr. Barber or Mr. Corbin, can you hear me?
I can, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Did you hear staff's presentation?
I did not.
Ms. Chairman,
I think it's
or
okay. if
Chairperson,
we redo it.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay, this application is for the installation of an awning at New York City Pizza. A red awning existed on the building prior to renovations. That red color is grandfathered in based on the previous awning. The signage will be approved under, or could be approved under, a separate permit, but to be clear, it's not part of this permit. Staff recommends approval with the following conditions. Change the location and or size of the awning to be consistent with the architectural features of the building. Provide a dimensioned plan of the awning and the window locations for staff review and approval. And when I flip through the screen quickly, I'll show you what staff's concern is. 2, cantilever the awning off of the building and eliminate the columns. And 3, eliminate the graphic print on the awning material. And this is other than the signage or verbiage, which again is approved under a separate sign permit. So the site is outlined. I'm sorry, you're not sharing my screen. Here I am. The building is circled in red. Pope Avenue is running diagonally across your screen. So here's the existing building and the proposed awning location on that building. It roughly corresponds to the width of the porch area above on the second story. Again, a closer view of that, pulled out a little bit. Again, the banner is temporary until this awning is up, and then the banner will come down. This is a picture showing the existing our previous red awning that grandfathers this awning in. The material of the awning, staff is concerned about the graphics on the awning, that it essentially makes the awning a sign, which would limit, per the LMO, the awning to the size of a sign. So just the red color is what staff is suggesting, the red awning with no graphics on it. Of course, this verbiage is what would be approved under a separate sign permit. You can see here the columns of the proposed awning and the porch indentation in the roof above, and a section showing the cantilevered with the columns. So here is what the awning would look like. Staff is suggesting that the awning either be shortened or extended so that it doesn't end in the middle of the window here. It appears that it ends on a column over here, which is appropriate. That's why staff is asking for a dimensioned plan that shows the windows and columns so that we can determine where the appropriate place is for the awning to end. And again, this is temporary banner on the second floor that will be removed. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Mr. Barber, do you have anything to add to Chris's narration?
My only question would be, the dimension that we considered was to match that upstairs porch. So I would just ask, where they would like that to end, and give us some guidelines so that we, can just, do it that way and move on. So if it goes to the end of that window on the left, then that's not a big deal. So I would just ask to know what where they want that to end.
Thank you.
Staff is,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you. That's why staff was asking for that dimension plan and showing if it's not a big deal to move it to the end, that works for staff. Let's just show that on a dimension plan with the architectural elements.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. I will start with the board. First discussion with Mr. Brown.
After reviewing the application, I went out to the site and I struggled a little bit. I drove around the island. I looked for other awnings. I referred to our design guide, and I see that awnings may be appropriate design elements if integral to the architectural design of the structure and not a dominant feature. Color and pattern choices are critical in designing a successful awning. Bright colors or elaborate patterns are generally not desirable. Awnings should not be incorporated solely to provide space for signed copy. I'm wondering if the awning is legally existing non-conforming, meaning they can put back what was there. Maybe an alternative would be for them to follow the same footprint as what previously existed. But I would really like to hear comments from other board members. Being a relatively new member, I don't have a lot of experience on the DRB with awnings, but I am struggling a little bit with this one.
Thank you. Ms. Lippert.
Thank you. I completely agree with Mr. Brown. And I guess one question to the applicant is the intent of this awning to serve the function of creating exterior seating space for the restaurant?
That I'm totally unaware of. We're the awning manufacturer, so I would refer back to the restaurant owner about that. I wouldn't know one way or the other about that.
Chris,
I don't
do you
think that
happen to know?
sidewalk's large enough for seating, really.
And that's exactly.
Staff is not aware of any plans.
Okay. So, because I have the exact same concerns that Mr. Brown has. To me, the sidewalk is too narrow. If it were to be intended to be seating area, I think it's too dominant. I think if it comes back in the same size, just around those 3 windows, like it was in the existing condition, I can support it. Because of exactly also the concerns with the lack of symmetry on the facade. My other condition would be that it should follow the slope of the roof. And I completely agree with staff comments that there should not be columns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAllister.
Thank you. I would also echo what Ms. Lippert just said. I strongly agree that I think this would look better if it was cantilevered and didn't have the posts. My first impression when I looked at this was it felt excessively long. So I think my thoughts are along the same lines as the board members that spoke before me. I think it needs to get smaller and relate to the building rather than get bigger. And other than that, I'm in agreement with staff comments regarding the white inkset printing graphic. And again, I think it should be the cantilevered structure without the columns. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Mr. Molesky?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I agree with what Mr. Brown and Ms. Lippert and David just said there. If you could go to the elevation, front elevation, I could offer my suggestion on a width, and we could compare and contrast, but it definitely, the sign is too wide. Perhaps if we look at where those two innermost posts or columns are on the second floor there, and just try to keep it inside of there, then this way, to Mr. Darnell's point, they don't extend to one side where you have three equally sized windows and the other side where things are different. I think by losing all the decorative stuff on there, it would make it more tasteful and more in keeping with island character, and all the great points that Mr. Brown had read off there. But other than that, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Karstens.
It seems as though the changes in the building have made it difficult for this proposal to kind of make sense. The older sign was centered over an entry, whereas now the entry is shifted to the right of this when you look at the building. So there's not even a doorway there in the center of the building on the first floor. It kind of creates a false sense of arrival. So I even have difficulty, if the thought is that you want to put the signage over your entry or in the most logical place over the entry, it would actually have to be more towards that right side of the building. I'm, obviously with staff on the print and with Mr. Brown, obviously verbatim from the design guide itself, it's difficult. I was hoping that there would be a column detail that could match up with the existing columns there, but I see that they're pretty much supporting a beam, and it wouldn't necessarily make the sense this scale, considering it is only 4 feet deep, at least in a horizontal distance. So I'm in agreement with the cantilever, and the fact is that you'd want to continue that roof pitch line, which if it's a flat enough roof, it makes that signage even more difficult to see. So that idea of that steeper canopy that was originally before might make more sense in just limiting the size overall. So I'm with staff and with my fellow board members. And again, I just, the idea is that there's symmetry in the upper part of this building, but the symmetry doesn't continue below, especially for the entry, making this a difficult aspect and a difficult one to follow and approve.
Thank you. Mr. Bassett.
Yes, I completely agree with Mr. Molesky that resizing it to kind of match up with the upper columns might make sense or more sense, and keep it where it works both above and below the canopy. It looks right now like the primary intention or primary goal of it is to be signage, especially with the print on it. I agree with staff that's not, and with Mr. Brown, that's not what these are supposed to be intended as per the design review, design review guide and town guidelines. Also with the color, I understand that the color is grandfathered in, but it was previously on a small awning tucked into the shade. And this seems so much larger and in bright sunlight that I think it'll clearly stand out much more than the color formerly stood out. In photos, I didn't think an awning would necessarily look good. Visiting it on site, I think an awning could potentially finish off the building nicely and look good aesthetically. But I think reducing the size would go a long way toward making it fit in better.
Thank you. Everyone on the board had great comments, and Mr. Brown, thank you for quoting the design guidelines. That kind of hit it off perfectly. I'm going to tell the applicant that I don't believe that we could get a motion to make an approval. I don't think anyone will approve it. So it would be my recommendation that you withdraw your this application and come back with major changes.
Okay, We can,
And we will need to hear you formally say, I'm withdrawing.
I'm withdrawing this application.
Thank you. So DRB 0020009-2021 has been withdrawn.
Mr. Barber, just to be clear, that preserves your right to come back to the DRB with any changes as soon as possible. And if you have any questions, staff is happy to help you, however, to get that back on the agenda as soon as possible.
I might
Thanks, Chris.
also add, you'll get comments from Chris, and you can also review the Facebook recording so you can hear what the comments were from the board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to board business. Before we get to the review and adoption of the meeting schedule, does anyone on the board have comments or concerns that they would like to add right now? All right, has everyone had a chance to review the Design Review Board proposed 2022 schedule? And if so, can I get a motion to approve the 2022 meeting schedule?
Chairwoman Voss, I just want to confirm, November 8th, we won't have any elections that we know of, as far as either the offices being closed or that being a conflict. And I know staff does a very good job of vetting that.
Chris, do you have comments to the?
Typically on election day, the town remains open,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the 2022 meeting schedule?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 meeting schedule as submitted.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
I'm raising my right hand.
Thanks. All right, motion passed by a vote of 7. Chris, do we have a minor corridor report?
We don't, or I guess we do, but there are none. So there's a report, but there's nothing in it.
I was going to ask you, is that the reason you had to change the subway DRB number because your minor corridor used the first one?
No, it was when the project came into the town, it was mistakenly given a final review, a permit, and it's a whole different setup. And so we just caught that at the last minute and had to change it to an alteration edition.
All right, thank you. Anything further from anyone? David, we got you out in time. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.